the ripples that you make, the impact that you have on others, and the impact that you have in this world. Often we may not actually learn the ripples that we have, but if we're attentive to how people receive us and attentive to how people respond and what we receive in life and what we experience in our lives, we can actually learn what effect that we end up having on the world and on others. Welcome to Mental Fortress Monday. I am Dr. Cheryl Carthouse, naturopathic doctor, and here on Mental Fortress Monday, we explore the who, what, where, when, why, and how of mindfulness and mindfulness-based practices, and how we can actually impact our lives to live more joyfully and to have an overall better quality of life. What if we paid more attention to the ripples that we created in this world? We could have more intimate, more deep, more meaningful relationship with others. We'd be able to listen better and understand how others are receiving us. Maybe we could achieve more of what we want in life and end up receiving more in return. Maybe have more abundance of whatever it is that we're looking for. Have you ever looked at that bigger picture of the impact that you have on this world? Well, some people are much better at taking that observation and taking that bigger picture, and others may need to make a little bit more of an effort. Maybe they struggle with it a little bit more to have that overall idea of what are the impact of my actions. And even if it's something specific, what is the specific impact of this action? So sometimes we need to be more intentional about this, about observation, about understanding. As a naturopathic doctor, I don't always get to learn the impact of a particular treatment. If somebody comes in once, I may or may not see them again in one visit, after one visit, and then I never actually learn if they didn't come back because it worked and they have no issues anymore, or if they didn't come back because they absolutely didn't enjoy our interaction or what we did together or whatever I came up with wasn't for them. So I never really know if somebody doesn't show up again. Now, of course, in business, there are ways of trying to understand that impact, and actually quite important for most businesses to get that feedback. So we can send out surveys and we can send out different ways of trying to understand what the impact of that particular interaction or that particular marketing strategy or whatever it is, that type of impact that it had on that person, especially when it comes to marketing. I've been through this with a couple of different types of companies that I've created over the years. And when you're trying to make the name for something or use language around something in particular, I've learned that I need to take less attachment to it. It doesn't necessarily matter what the words are, or I should say, I don't really care what the words are or what the title of it is if it has the desired impact that I'm looking for. And I don't think we do this enough in our daily lives. We don't look at the desired impact and see if it matches what is actually coming forward from the particular actions, statements, words, or silence that we're using. And if we want to foster really good, in depth, meaningful, healthy relationships, if we want to observe something more in our life, are we taking the time to figure out if what our words, silence, or behaviors are actually creating? So, what is your ripple effect? Sometimes in life, getting that feedback can be really difficult. They can be sensitive subjects. It can be difficult to get somebody's honest opinion. And maybe we can't all handle the truth. Can you put yourself in a situation where feedback is easy to give, that you may be more receptive to it so that you can learn something from it, as opposed to being defensive right away because maybe it didn't have the impact that you wanted it to have? And could it be a lesson of changing your language or changing a way of approaching a situation or adding in more silence or taking away more silence, having a different behavior in order to have a particular effect that you want? Isn't that sort of what life is about? It's not really always about just feeling how we feel and being able to act on all of these impulses. It's, well, what influence am I having in the world? And what does this actually create for other people? And what does it actually create for me in as I receive back from other people have in that interaction? So if we paid attention to our ripple effect, we actually could live happier, more fulfilling lives in the way and the intention that we want. So let that sink in for a minute. Can you choose the words or silence or action according to the impact that you want to have and not the impulse that you need or feel like you want to act on? Can you choose words, silence, and actions to have the impact that you want instead of just acting on the impulse that you have? How often do we really do this? When you're upset or irritated, do you get snippy and kind of bring somebody else into this world? Misery loves company. So does anger. So does everything else. Can we reorient ourselves sometimes to actually then maybe create a different ripple to get ourselves out of that particular mood or whatever it is? Or if you're going to have a particular behavior or impact or whatever it is, what are actually the consequences of those actions? When I was about 12, I had a friend who herself had been through a lot of trauma, and I don't find it funny when people get hurt. I know lots of people laugh at that sort of thing, but I don't think it's funny when people get hurt. Maybe this is my sensitivity to these kinds of things and the impact. And being a medicine woman and a healer in this way, obviously, people being hurt means consequences for them and their health. And so I'm very aware of that. But even as a child, I never thought those kinds of things were funny. So when I was about 12, I was at my cousin's place, and a friend of mine who I was going to go see later on, and I saw her every week. We would do after school dance together and whatnot. And my parents would pick me up at her place on their way home from work. And she called my cousin's place, and I talked to her on the phone. And in a very solemn voice, she said, "Hi, is this Cheryl? This is the hospital calling. Your mother's been in a very severe accident." And I went white as a ghost, and I'm sitting on the phone, and I knew obviously there was something not quite right because my mother was upstairs. And that's just what I said. I said, "My mom's upstairs. Like, what is this prank call?" And she just started laughing. If my mother hadn't been upstairs, the impact and the significance of that just gut punched me. And still to this day, it's one of the memories that I have of her, of this kind of sort of trauma replicating action that she did. Because at the time, this is how she knew to interact with people. These are the kinds of experiences that she had on a regular basis. And so, based on what you experience and your trauma in the past, can you try to create a different ripple in your future if that's something that you want? Instead of recreating these traumas for other people in whatever effect they may be, maybe they're just small little ones, or maybe it could be amusing to somebody. Well, what impact does that end up having? Even the other day, I was meeting some friends for a walk, and I was coming around a different way and going to meet part way up with them. And I thought about jumping out and trying to surprise them or scare them a little bit. And this is where this idea kind of fostered and grew, because I was thinking about what impact would that have, and if they were all of a sudden sort of shocked and had a little bit of fear in them, versus if I saw them and ran up with open arms and a big hug and was just like, hey, I love you. What two impacts would that have? Jumping out and scaring somebody versus running out with open arms with a whole bunch of love. And I know these can be little things. They have ripple effects. And these ripple effects get bigger and bigger and bigger as they continue to flail out into the world. Just a simple smile can have such an impact on somebody in a day. And they start smiling at somebody else, and maybe that puts somebody else in a better mood, and they give somebody a promotion for whatever reason. And they, we never really know what small actions can turn into for others. Sometimes, again, we can get that feedback, but other times, especially when it ends up being a couple people removed, maybe it was from that simple act that you did out of creating more love and creating more of whatever it is that you want in the world, that actually then impacted others and got them maybe to a better place or helped them in some way. So let's pay attention to this kind of ripple effect. What are we amplifying in our lives? Is there a particular state that you're perpetuating based on how you feel in the moment and what your emotions are, what you've experienced in the past? There's so many different ways to have these impacts. And what is it that we are creating when we use particular words, silence, or actions? Are we amplifying and creating a ripple that we want more of in this world? Or are we creating a little bit more of a self-fulfilling prophecy by perpetuating the particular emotions that we have, or a particular state of trauma that we have, or whatever it is that we're not mindfully paying attention to? I challenge you with two things then this week. One, can you embrace the silence a little bit more if you tend to be one of those people who talk? Maybe more than you need to. Or maybe talk instead of really listening to what the other person's response is. Can you pay attention to what that response is? If it's in an immediate reaction, or maybe even novel idea, ask for feedback and say like, oh, okay, we had this interaction, or I did this for you. Like, how did that actually make you feel? Sometimes it can be an awkward conversation. Sometimes it can be a little bit uncomfortable, and people don't always love sharing those emotions. But creating more of that open idea of actually receiving an understanding of what that feedback is, you might be surprised at what the impact that you have is, whether it be totally the opposite of what you're intending, or whether it be something super magical that you didn't dream of an impact that you could have in the world. Both of those happen a lot. So can you find out in some way of what the consequences are of your actions and your words and the silence that you choose to use? And two, the more mindful that we are of ourself and our state, the more mindful we can be of every other moment. So having a mindfulness practice in the morning can actually make us more mindful for the rest of the day. And if we are in a state of mindfulness, we can observe ourselves. We can observe our own emotions. We can observe the impact that we have. We can actually remember to kind of take a breath and a step back and maybe provide different words in the moment and think about them before we speak, or we can provide a silence in the moment if it's needed. Even if it's awkward, we can be a little bit more comfortable with that. Mindfulness makes all of these things more accessible. So I challenge you this week to instate a practice of mindfulness in the morning so that we can be more mindful moment to moment throughout the day. And then so I invite you to sit with me here in a guided meditation practice. And if you can sit comfortably, Find a space. Ideally, that is quiet, without distraction, maybe even with the lights dimmed. And just start with your breathing, paying attention to your breath as it moves in through your nostrils and out through your nostrils. Not trying to change anything about your breath, just being able to pay attention to it. Noticing as you're breathing in, and noticing that moment that you start breathing out. If you can close your eyes without distraction, that is ideal. Because as our eyes are open, we tend to perpetuate more thoughts. We see something, it reminds us of something, and our minds wander. And as your mind wanders, just bring it back again into the moment, paying attention to your breath as it moves in and as it moves out. Noticing any sensations that are created on that little triangle between your nostrils and your upper lip. Breathing in and out just at your own pace. When you're ready, move your attention to the top of your head. And if you can't quite feel a pinpoint in the top of your head, just place a finger there so that you can feel the pressure of your finger on that spot. Much more easily can bring your attention there. And then melt your awareness, your attention over your face, one area at a time, noticing any sensations that you have in those spots. Do this in whatever way you feel is easiest for you. Maybe it's in strips down your head, maybe it's your whole face all at once. Maybe they're thin little lines or patches. There's no wrong way to move your attention. The main things that we're trying to do is bring your awareness back into the attention and into that moment. As it wanders, bring it back to whatever that task is, be it the breathing, or right now, our observation of our sensations on our body. It's just like in your mind, you're moving your awareness down and scanning your body. And as a sensation comes up, you pay attention to it in a neutral way, without judgment, without labeling that sensation. And as your awareness moves down your head, you can continue it down the rest of your body, down one shoulder, all the way out to your fingertips. Paying attention to the sensations that you experience. Can be a tickle from the air. Maybe you feel your clothes on your body. And then down, starting at the other shoulder, all the way down your arm, your elbow, your lower arm, wrist, hands, fingers, all the way out to your fingertips. And as your mind wanders, just bring it back again. And be neutral about any sensation you experience. If it's an itch, just let it be an itch. And as you increase your practice, as your nervous system becomes a little more settled, see if you can push responding to that particular sensation. If it's an itch, just push a little more before actually scratching. Just see if you can observe it until it changes. One of the only guarantees in nature is change. And move your awareness starting at your neck, down the front side of your body, exploring the left and right sides of your chest, and down your abdomen, around your abdomen. Maybe you notice some sensations here. And again, just observe them with curiosity. It helps to bring us away from a judgment. Explore it in the boundaries that it has and the borders and how they might change, or are they stagnant? If it had a color, what color would that sensation be? If it had a texture, what texture would that sensation be? If it had a temperature, what temperature would that sensation be? And just explore it with curiosity instead of worrying, creating fear around it, trying to figure out what exactly it is. Just let it be and let it change as it will. You can move your attention all the way into your pelvis, and then starting at the top, the back of your neck, exploring your entire back, one vertebrae at a time, exploring the left and right sides, noting any sensations here that you experience without trying to change anything. When our mind wanders, we bring it back. When we note something, we're curious about it. You can stay with it and be curious and ask all of those questions about the borders and the color and the texture, where you can feel it and notice it, acknowledge it, and move on with your scan. It's there, it's fine. Let it be without responding as much as possible. And move your awareness down into your pelvis and your sits bones, around one hip, down your upper leg to your knee, lower leg, ankle, foot, all the way out to your toe tips. And again, maybe you do this in strips or chunks of the body, whatever is easy and accessible to you today. And then starting at the other hip, also moving down, bringing your attention back as it wanders. It doesn't need to be in perfect order. There's not really any wrong way to meditate. So if you forget where you were, as you notice that your attention wandered, bring it back and start somewhere. Moving your awareness down in whatever fashion is easy. One strip at a time, one chunk at a time, as quickly or as slowly as comes accessible to you today. When you notice a sensation, just be curious around it, not labeling it, not creating any ideas around it, just allowing it to be exactly as it is without any other thought attachments to it. You're all the way out to your toe tips. Bring it back to your breath. And again, noticing your breath as it moves in and out of your nostrils. And any sensations created by your breath on that little triangle between your nostrils and your upper lip. And paying attention to your breath and just noticing if it's slow or fast. Without trying to change anything, just acknowledging exactly as it is. Thank you so much for joining me here on Mental Fortress Monday this morning. If you have any questions, comments, I'd love to hear from you. You can always leave me a message. I'd love to answer your questions on any of our upcoming episodes of Mental Fortress Monday. Have an amazing week.